You know, it really is wild how we just accept commercial air travel as completely normal.
Oh, absolutely. It's bizarre when you actually stop and think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you pack a bag, you buy a $12 bottle of water, and then you just step into a pressurized metal tube that shoots you 30,000 feet into the sky.
Yeah, and we treat it like taking the bus.
Exactly. You just sit there sipping your ginger ale, watching a movie on a tiny screen, completely ignoring the absolute physical reality of what you're doing.
Well, because if you actually thought about the physics, the environment every single second,
Yeah.
it would be terrifying.
Oh, for sure.
We have to normalize the impossible just to cope with it. I mean, you are in an entirely unnatural, highly engineered survival capsule.
Yeah, breathing recycled oxygen.
Right, breathing recycled oxygen, sitting inches away from a deafening jet engine, and you are trapped in a sealed environment with 200 complete strangers.
It is the ultimate liminal space, like a place that exists entirely between places.
Hmm.
And usually the absolute worst thing you have to deal with in that environment is someone kicking the back of your seat or maybe fighting over an armrest.
Yeah, the annoyances are very mundane.
Right. You feel safe because of the sheer boring mundanity of it all. But what if that completely unnatural environment becomes the setting for something deeply fundamentally wrong?
Oh, man.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a brilliant piece of short fiction today, a story called The Ghost in Seat 21B.
That's such a good one.
It really is. And our mission isn't just to recap a spooky story for you, but to figure out exactly why it works so well.
Right.
We are going to look at how this story masterfully twists the mundane annoyance of a crowded red-eye flight into an exploration of human perception, the uncanny, and the terrifying ways our brains try to protect us from the impossible.
It really is a fantastic psychological study disguised as a supernatural thriller.
Yeah, totally.
Because as we were just saying, an airplane cabin in the middle of the night is already an isolated, sensory-deprived environment.
Mm-hmm.
The author of this story doesn't have to invent a haunted house. They just use that pre-existing shared claustrophobia that you and I have already experienced.
That is so true.
We're looking at how tension is built not through action, but through the profound absence of it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We start with the protagonist, Maya Desai. She has just finished a brutal work week and is taking a cheap late-night flight from Dubai to Mumbai.
The classic exhausting red eye.
Exactly. So she boards around 1:20 a.m. The cabin lights are dim, the flight attendants have those exhausted, forced smiles, and Maya finds her window seat, 21A.
But seat 21B isn't empty.
No, it's not. The middle seat right next to her is already occupied by a tall, thin man in a dark gray coat. And almost immediately, the author starts dropping breadcrumbs that something is off about this guy.
And importantly, they aren't like obvious jump scare breadcrumbs.
Right.
Maya just notices his hands are folded perfectly on his lap, and he is staring straight ahead. He doesn't react when people bump into his shoulder as they walk down the narrow aisle.
Yeah, and Maya gives him a polite, excuse me, to squeeze past, and he doesn't move an inch.
Not even a flinch.
Initially, she just assumes he's wearing earbuds or is just a rude passenger, but then she starts noticing his stillness.
It's really unsettling.
It's not just that he's quiet. It is a complete unnatural paralysis. He doesn't stretch. He doesn't shift his weight. He doesn't even look out the window when lightning flashes outside.
And then the big one?
Right. Then she realizes he never blinks. You know what it reminds me of?
Right.
It sounds exactly like sitting next to an animatronic figure at a theme park that has suddenly lost power.
Oh, wow. That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Like, the physical presence is there, taking up space, the clothes are there, the shape is there, but the underlying spark of life, the hum of the machinery, is just gone.
Right. It puts you squarely in the uncanny valley.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is the underlying biology of why that creeps us out so much.
Oh, do tell.
Well, in storytelling, we usually expect a threat to be active, like a monster chasing you. But human beings are kinetic creatures,
We're always moving.
right? Even when we are sitting perfectly still, we aren't actually still. We have micro movements. We shift our weight. Our eyes dart around in microsaccades. Our chests rise and fall.
Sure, breathing and all that.
Exactly. The primal reptilian part of our brain is wired to detect those micro movements to recognize life. When a biological entity exhibits zero kinetic energy, our brain flags it as a corpse.
Ugh, that's so creepy.
It flags it as disease or danger.
So, sitting next to him isn't just socially awkward. Her central nervous system is literally screaming at her that this thing shouldn't be here,
Yes.
and that violation of natural law becomes undeniable when the plane takes off. The aircraft is violently shaking as it climbs through the storm clouds, gravity is shifting, and this man does not flex a single muscle to brace himself.
He is a static object in a highly dynamic environment.
Which is just so wrong.
And that is where the story pivots from an uncomfortable observation into a breakdown of reality. Maya tries to ignore him by putting on a movie, but the strangeness starts infecting the rest of the cabin during the 3 a.m. meal service.
Yes, the meal service. This is such a great scene. The flight attendants are rolling the carts down the aisle. One of them asks Maya, vegetarian or chicken?
Classic airline choice.
Right. Maya chooses vegetarian, takes her tray, and then the attendant just keeps walking.
Just completely skips him.
She completely ignores the guy in 21B. She doesn't ask what he wants. She doesn't offer a drink. She doesn't even look at him. Now, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If I'm Maya, my first thought isn't ghost. My first thought is, okay, the flight attendant probably just saw he was dead asleep, or maybe the manifest said he requested not to be disturbed. Isn't that a perfectly rational assumption?
It absolutely is. In fact, that is exactly the kind of predictive coding our brains use to protect our worldview.
Predictive coding.
Yet your brain wants the world to make sense, so it invents a logical narrative to explain the anomaly. But the story strips that safety net away pretty quickly.
Oh, right. Because Maya realizes it isn't just the attendant.
Exactly. The passengers across the aisle were doing it too. They are unconsciously looking right past him. Their eyes physically sweep over his seat, but they don't register him.
They are just editing him out of the environment, like a glitch they refuse to process.
Exactly. This taps into the psychological phenomenon of inattentional blindness, but taken to a supernatural extreme.
Right, like missing a detail because you're busy.
Normally, yeah. Inattentional blindness happens when you are so focused on a task that you miss something obvious right in front of you. But here, their brains are encountering a piece of data, a dead man sitting in a chair that completely shatters their model of reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
So instead of processing the trauma of that impossibility, their visual cortex just deletes him. It renders an empty seat to keep them sane.
Which introduces an absolutely terrifying concept for you as the listener. Maya is isolated.
Completely.
She is sitting in a tiny row, 30,000 feet in the air, and she is realizing she might be the only human being on this aircraft whose brain hasn't filtered this guy out. She is completely alone with the impossible.
And isolation forces confrontation. If nobody else is going to acknowledge this tear in reality, Maya has to test it herself just to prove she isn't losing her mind.
So at 4:12 a.m., she does. She leans over and whispers, "Are you okay?"
Such a brave move.
I know, right? And slowly he replies, "Yes, I don't travel often anymore."
Oof.
The voice is described as dry and unused, like someone trying to remember how vocal cords work. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Tell me.
The horror isn't just visual or auditory anymore. A massive sensory shift happens. Suddenly, Maya smells damp earth, like a wet soil after a heavy rain. And she looks closer at his clothes, and they are suddenly older, wrinkled, covered in dust. His skin is unnaturally pale, and there's dark dirt packed under his fingernails.
It's so visceral.
It's like watching a photograph degrade right in front of you. The illusion of a neat, gray-coated passenger is melting away to reveal something ancient and buried.
That sensory detail is so intentional. In human anatomy, your sense of smell bypasses the thalamus, which is the brain's logical routing center.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it goes directly to the olfactory bulb, which is tied directly to the amygdala and hippocampus, emotion and memory.
Oh, wow, I never knew that.
By introducing the smell of wet earth, the author bypasses Maya's logic. You can rationalize away a shadow or a strange sound. You cannot rationalize the smell of a graveyard at 30,000 feet.
That is wild. Smell is the ultimate proof that it's real. And going back to his dialogue, "I don't travel often anymore." I mean, what a line.
Right. It is a masterful piece of foreshadowing in the text. It doesn't sound angry or malicious. It sounds profoundly melancholic.
Yeah, very sad.
It establishes a tone of tragic permanence right before the story kicks into pure horror during the storm.
And it really does accelerate into visceral panic here. All this subtle, creeping dread we've been talking about hits a brick wall.
The climax in the clouds.
Exactly. Severe turbulence hits. The whole plane drops violently. Overhead compartments are rattling. Oxygen masks are nearly deploying. People are screaming. It is absolute chaos.
Terrifying.
And through all this violent kinetic energy, the man remains perfectly, impossibly motionless.
Maya completely breaks down here. She hits the call button, pulls an exhausted flight attendant over, and whispers that the man beside her is sick.
And the attendant looks completely bewildered. She stares directly at the seat and tells Maya, "Ma'am, no one is sitting there. Seat 21B has been empty since boarding."
Oh, chills. Every
Yeah.
time.
Right. Then Maya looks back, and the man slowly turns his head. The movement is described as too smooth and too delayed.
Not human.
Not at all. He smiles faintly with this ash gray skin and says, "You noticed me, most don't anymore." She sees bare feet on the floor, gray skin stretched over bone, covered in mud. She asks him who he is, and he just stares at her and says one word, "Delayed."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the use of that specific word is phenomenal writing.
How so?
Well, in the context of modern air travel, delayed is the ultimate mundane annoyance. It means you miss a connection or you're stuck buying a stale sandwich at the terminal.
You've all been there.
But here, the author brilliantly repurposes that everyday inconvenience into an existential horror.
Right, because he isn't just late for a meeting.
Exactly. His soul, his energy, his very existence is stuck in transit. He is permanently delayed between life and whatever comes next.
And right as he says it, a lightning flash reveals his true reflection in the window glass. It is a burned corpse.
Horrifying.
The skin is completely blackened, the jaw is partially missing, and the eyes are just empty, dark sockets.
The visual of the burn victim, combined with the smell of the earth, perfectly encapsulates his state. He is a casualty of both the fire of a crash and the earth of a grave, sitting right there in a commercial cabin.
But just as she is about to scream, the terror peaks, and then the storm passes, the plane stabilizes.
The relief is palpable.
Yeah, the cabin lights brighten, and they start their descent into Mumbai. It brings Maya and the listener right back to the harsh, bright light of reality.
Yet the tension doesn't leave. As the plane lands and people start unbuckling their seatbelts, the entity in 21B still doesn't move.
Right up until the moment Maya looks over.
And he is simply gone.
He didn't stand up, he didn't walk away. It's just a perfectly untouched, empty seat with no tray or blanket.
So she demands answers.
She does. She corners that same flight attendant as everyone is deplaning and demands to know who was in that seat.
This is where the story grounds its supernatural horror in real-world lore. The attendant breaks down and reveals the dark history.
3 years ago, right?
Yes. 3 years ago, a plane crashed flying from Dubai. It went down over the Arabian Sea during a violent storm. There were no survivors.
So tragic.
The airline retired the flight number, but sometimes on overnight routes, passengers still mention someone sitting in seat 21B.
And the attendant leaves Maya with this chilling line. They say someone is still trying to get home.
It changes everything.
It really does. Think about that for a second. How does that line change the way we view this terrifying burned figure?
Oh.
Does it shift the entire narrative from pure horror to a really bizarre, heartbreaking tragedy?
It completely reframes Maya's entire experience. The man wasn't a malicious entity trying to drag her down or harm her.
No, not at all.
He was an echo, a geographic haunting. He is a trauma loop, doomed to endlessly repeat his final, terrifying moments in the sky over and over again, trapped in that storm.
That is so profoundly sad.
The horror doesn't come from a threat of violence. It comes from the tragedy of his permanence.
And it would be a perfect, haunting end to a psychological ghost story if it stopped there. But the source text has one final physical twist waiting for Maya when she gets back to her apartment.
The intrusion into reality.
Yes. She gets home, completely exhausted, shaking violently. She unzips her carry-on bag to unpack. And buried at the very bottom, underneath her clothes, she finds tangible proof.
Not just a memory.
Physical evidence. There is damp, black soil scattered across the bottom of her suitcase, and resting right in the middle of that dirt is an old, half-burned boarding pass for Flight 702, seat 21B.
Wow.
So what does this all mean? I mean, how does finding a physical object change the nature of everything we just discussed? I mean, she didn't just hallucinate this out of exhaustion.
This raises an important question, right?
Right.
Regarding the boundary between the supernatural and the physical world.
Exactly.
Up until Maya unzips that bag, you could easily argue that she simply hallucinated the entire ordeal. She was exhausted, sleep-deprived, sitting in a pressurized cabin.
A textbook stress-induced nightmare.
Right. But the author refuses to give us that comforting rational out. The source text leaves us with tangible proof of the impossible. The soil and the burn ticket serve as a permanent tether between Maya's reality and the tragedy of Flight 702.
What an incredible journey this story takes us on.
It really is a masterclass in escalating tension.
We started with the highly relatable, boring annoyance of being cramped next to a weirdo on a red-eye flight. Then we descended into this claustrophobic, isolated psychological terror where Maya realizes she is completely alone in her perception.
And finally ending with undeniable physical evidence of a tragedy trapped in time.
It's just brilliant.
It leaves you with a deeply unsettling perspective on shared public environments. So the next time you find yourself on a crowded flight, 30,000 feet in the air,
Oh boy.
surrounded by strangers in that humming metal tube, and you notice the seat right next to you is remarkably perfectly empty, ask yourself, is it truly empty? Or are you just one of the lucky ones who can no longer notice the passengers who are simply delayed?
Oof. I am never going to look at an empty middle seat the same way again. That is going to stick with me. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a few chills and a totally new way to think about the spaces we travel through every day. Until next time, stay